I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of Old's Oscar Countdown. And this week, it's been a crazy sort of week. Last week we had the Oscar nominations, but this week, because of the shortened schedule, we're now looking at my reactions to the PGA Awards, which happened a couple nights ago, and then the SAGs, which happened, of course, last night. I'm also going to be talking about the Best Picture frontrunner, so it's going to be a big episode. First, give you my reactions on the PGA winner, and then my reactions on the SAG winner. Now we sort of have to transition, right? Before we were thinking about who's going to get nominated. Then the Oscar nominations came out. It told us a lot of stuff, but now we're going into the mode of who's going to win. I did very well in terms of the nominations. I got top 1% in the world on Gold Derby with an 80% accuracy rating. So that's why you watch these videos. That's why you listen to my opinion and my advice to give you the most accurate predictions. And I think top 1% therefore shows that. And I expect to do just as well come Oscars night. But now we're predicting the winners. So oftentimes I may have predicted something like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood as a lock for a lot of nominations, which it did. However, that doesn't mean Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is necessarily the front runner, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to win all those awards, even though it was the most likely to get nominated. So now it's almost a different sort of mindset that we have to think about. So I'm going to be talking about the PGA reactions to the winner, the SAG reactions, and then also just going to in-depth of who is going to win Best Picture, who are the front runners, what do these awards tell us, how will that impact the race going forward. And then stay tuned every single week. I'm going to be talking about the BAFTAs when they come out, DGA, those reactions. And I'm also going to be doing sort of these two parts like I did at the beginning, where I'm going to be doing a little bit of a reaction, but then also maybe looking at the acting races, maybe looking at some of the technical stuff, because I still want to give in-depth analysis to a lot of those different categories. But of course, these industry precursors definitely tell us a lot. So starting off with the PGA, the big winner being 1917, and in my opinion is now the Best Picture frontrunner. This, if you don't know what the Producer Guild Award is, it is essentially an award show that occurs every year that is historically extremely accurate at predicting Best Picture. This is because since the implementation of the preferential ballot, the Oscars adopted in 2009, I believe, they expanded the category to 10 movies, and they introduced a preferential ballot. The PGA has also done the same, and they also implemented a preferential ballot. So quickly, I'll just explain the preferential ballot. Essentially, what it is that if you're doing every other category and you're voting on every other category like members of the Academy do come Oscar time, if you're looking at the Best Actor, you say, I think Joaquin Phoenix for Joker should win this. And you check off Joaquin Phoenix's name, and then that's it. However, with the preferential ballot, it's as the name suggests, you rank the choices in terms of preference. So you may like Parasite as your favorite movie of the year, but you really appreciate Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and The Irishman. So you put Once Upon a Time in Hollywood 2, The Irishman 3. Maybe you hate Joker, so you put it at number 9. So oftentimes, ever since this has been implemented, it has sort of changed the way we see the Oscars in terms of this Best Picture race, and therefore has to be analyzed on its own and separately. So oftentimes, you're not even looking at the movie that's most well-beloved, that has the most passionate fan base. You're not really even looking at those number one votes, because oftentimes, for example, like a movie like Joker, some people think that's their favorite movie of the year. But I think some people really dislike the movie as well, so that may be their number 9 slot. And that doesn't really help out in terms of the scoring. It actually helps out to be getting a lot of number 2 votes or a lot of 3 votes, sort of the consensus pick. I believe this is how movies like Green Book or even something like Moonlight or Spotlight have won Best Picture, is because they're more of the consensus, everyone enjoys that movie. So now we have to determine what kind of movie is that this year. And oftentimes when we're looking at the precursors, we look at the PGAs, because out of the last 12 years, they have predicted the correct Oscar 10 times. So especially ever since that introduction of the preferential ballot, it has really sort of made sense of a lot of races that were unclear. So no, it missed out on a year like something like The Big Short, for example, but that was spread out between The Big Short, The Revenant, Spotlight. That didn't give us a lot of confusion. But in years when we weren't exactly sure, something like The Shape of Water, it won PGA. Green Book last year, we weren't sure, it won PGA. So the Producer Guild Award is huge. So 1917 winning here is probably the biggest boost any film has ever gotten this season. It's just a huge sign that with the preferential ballot, with this small subsection of the Academy, in a lot of ways a great sample size that are voting on the best film of the year, because the Producer Guild, they nominated 10 films, but they nominated 9 the films that were nominated for Best Picture. So it's a great sort of sample size, a great accurate representation of what could happen if the Oscars were to happen essentially right now. So that really helps 1917 as a whole, and that's a big booster, and very much could be its sort of lock and seal kind of a movie of it won PGA. PGA is super accurate. Last 10 out of the 12 winners went on to win Best Picture. That's a huge, great stat that you have to follow. It uses the preferential ballot like the Oscars, which worked towards 1917's favor. It won the Golden Globe to the Oscars. It's making a lot of money. It's sort of coalescing right at this great time, and that could really help its chances. We also had the Best Animated Award, which went to Toy Story 4. So that sort of locks it in as the front runner as of right now. It was always a presumed front runner, but it was just such a weird year with Missing Link winning the Globes and Frozen 2 not getting in, which we thought was a lock. But it seems like Pixar, like I showed the stats in my animated predictions video, when they get nominated, they almost always win. You know, they didn't win for the very first animated one with Monsters, Inc. They didn't win for something like Cars, Inc., which was a lesser movie. But aside from that, when they get nominated, Inside Out, Up, WALL-E, Coco, they always win. So I wouldn't be surprised if Toy Story 4 wins here for Best Animated Film, and this sort of Producers Guild gives it the sort of lock and seal of approval. Then for Best Documentary, it doesn't tell us a lot, unfortunately, because it went to Apollo 11, which wasn't even nominated at the Oscars. So I think that probably it doesn't tell us a lot, but my prediction right now for Best Documentary in terms of winning will probably be American Factory, because that's the only film that's gotten in really everywhere. But I wouldn't be surprised if something like Honeyland can surprise. Then we had the SAG Awards last night, and the big winner was Parasite for Best SAG Ensemble, for Best Ensemble in a Motion Picture. And that's a big award for them, definitely. I mean, it's a definite huge push for Parasite potentially winning the Oscar for Best Picture. You know, it didn't get any of the acting nominations when the nominations came out, so I thought that, okay, maybe, it didn't have a lot of acting support, but it got enough support to get that ensemble nomination. And therefore now it winning the ensemble nomination sort of negates the fact that it didn't get any acting nominations. It still shows that it has the support from the acting branch. It has some of the technical support now. It has a really great path, and maybe even an easy path to the Oscars. So this is really a big boost, especially for a foreign film like this to win and do so well. However, the SAGs aren't as good as a predictor as the PGAs. I always trust the PGAs over the SAGs because you just look at the numbers. PGA, the last 12 times, it corrected it right, the Best Picture right 10 times. 10 out of the last 12 it got right. You look at something for SAG, and in the last 10 years, it only got it right 3 times. And recently, the past few years, when it introduced AFTRA, so it used to be SAG, which was actors, but now AFTRA, which includes TV personalities and radio hosts, now that has really diverged from the past. And I think a lot of times, Parasite may fit in this. We're not so sure because we're not sure about the Best Picture winner. But oftentimes, this Best Ensemble win goes to a film that they really liked, but they didn't really nominate anywhere else. If you look at something like Parasite, this was its sole nominee. It didn't get any of the other acting nominations. Yet it still got in here because they still really liked the movie, they liked the ensemble, they didn't know who to pick, so they just chose everyone essentially. Same thing happened last year with Black Panther. However, Black Panther didn't win Best Picture. It didn't get any other acting nominations, but it got that Best SAG Ensemble because they liked everyone in there. And this has happened with something like even Hidden Figures or American Hustle, where they win the SAG Award. They may have a couple of other nominations, but they don't win. It's not like, Jennifer Lawrence wins for Best Supporting Actress at SAG, and then American Hustle wins for Best Ensemble. Most of the time, it's no one else wins, and then it wins for the ensemble because they liked Hidden Figures a lot. They liked, American Hustle a lot. But oftentimes, those movies don't go on to win Best Picture. So I think that's a sign that maybe Parasite, it's still a boost. I think some people are still going to predict it to win. They could have an easy chance to win. But for me, the way I'm looking at it is, right now, just based on these two award shows, I give 1917 the edge because it has that PGA, and PGA is a little bit more reliable and trustworthy. But ultimately, it actually may come down to the Directors Guild. Mostly the top 3 that we look at being Screen Actors Guild, the Directors Guild, and the Producers Guild. So next week we'll be reacting to the Directors Guild Awards because actually my frontrunners, in my opinion, are Bong Joon-ho and Sam Mendes. So if Sam Mendes wins for 1917, I'm probably predicting 1917 because it got the PGA. But if Bong Joon-ho wins for Parasite, it gets TGA and it gets that SAG Ensemble, maybe I'm going for Parasite. But then what if something like a Quentin Tarantino or Martin Scorsese for The Irishman wins, which is still very possible? Then I'm still probably going to go with 1917 because I just trust the PGAs based on historical data more than the DGAs or SAG. especially now that SAG, you know, they only got the last 10 years, they only got 3 of them. They only predicted the Best Picture winner 3 times. So not a great track record, especially recently. You know, recent years you had Black Panther didn't win, 3 Billboards didn't win, Hidden Figures didn't win. They got Spotlight right, and Birdman before that, but then the year before that was American Hustle, which wasn't right. So they sort of have a spotty record. And usually the stat used to be if it gets nominated, that's sort of a good sign for the movie. But even that doesn't matter, because the last 2 years, the last 2 winners, Green Book and The Shape of Water, weren't even nominated for Best SAG Ensemble, the same way 1917 wasn't nominated for Best SAG Ensemble. So I don't think you should trust SAG all the way. I wish I was saying, oh, Parasite, it's the guaranteed front runner, it's going to win Best Picture, because I really enjoyed the movie so much. But right now, if I'm looking at the numbers, I'm looking at the lack of accuracy from SAG and the accuracy from PGA. It really depends on that DGA win. If Bong Joon-ho wins, I think that's a huge, huge support for Parasite. But if Sam Mendes wins for 1917, I'm probably going to go with 1917 for Best Picture. But we'll talk about the Best Picture frontrunners, the positives and the negatives, a little bit later in the video. As of course, you can look at the descriptions and click ahead. I have the timestamps to see the different categories. Of course, if you sort of want to skip ahead of the video. I guess now jumping, it's also notable that SAG was very early this year, especially that we're in a shortened season, so they didn't even nominate movies like Little Women or 1917 that were really well beloved by the other branches of the Academy and the Oscars, because it was just not enough people had seen them. They were released a little bit too late, and because this short Oscar season, you know, certain campaigns, it's going to be really hard for a campaign to really build. That takes time. So 1917, that could be a reason why I didn't get any SAG anything, because it just wasn't seen by anyone. And then with the acting races, they seem to be locked and loaded, and these are going to be the winners throughout the year. There could be a little bit of an upset at BAFTA, but I'd be hesitant to switch, because it seemed like the Globe sort of crowned the 4 winners and the SAGs did the exact same thing, which I thought there maybe would be a surprise, but seemingly Renee Zellweger is going to win for Best Lead Actress, Joaquin Phoenix is going to win for Best Lead Actor, Brad Pitt's going to win for Best Supporting Actor, and Laura Dern is going to win for Best Supporting Actress. Now, we've seen this before, something like 2017, where it was Allison Janney, Sam Rockwell, Frances McDormand, and Gary Oldman, sort of were the 4 winners, and the Globes pronounced that, and that's what happened, and that's what happened at the Oscars, and that was almost predetermined in a lot of ways, the way a lot of acting races are, which is kind of boring. You know, there's not really any suspense. Even something like Scarlett not winning for somebody like Marriage Story, or even Jojo Rabbit, even though she was nominated twice, was a bummer. But it seems like the 4 races are sort of locked in stone, and they're probably not going to change unless something happens at the BAFTA. Now, there's still a possibility for them to change. I mean, there's the Oscars I still think in their bones, want to do something different, want to have their own thing. Oh, everyone thinks Laura Dern is going to win this year. Actually, we like Scarlett a lot. We like Jojo Rabbit a lot. We're going to give her that. That could still easily happen. I mean, we saw someone like Antonio Banderas, who I correctly predicted for Best Nomination, get nominated at the Oscars, even though he wasn't nominated anywhere else, because I felt that they wanted to do something a little bit different. They got Kathy Bates in. They did something a little bit different. They didn't like J-Lo. They still are their own award show. They do like to do a little bit things differently. Even something like Olivia Colman. Glenn Close won everything else except for BAFTA, and they still went with Olivia Colman because we want to do something a little bit different. So the smart pick will probably be to choose the 4, but if you want to go a little bit exciting, a little bit different, you may want to do something and bet on the fact that the Oscars do like to do something a little bit different. And maybe the BAFTAs will tell us something, but right now it seems like these 4 are the predetermined winners for the season. Now into my Best Picture frontrunners, starting off with 1917. The pros being that, of course, it just won PGA, a very historically accurate nomination. It got the boost with an incredible speech from Sam Mendes at the Golden Globes as that sort of a surprise win. It's doing incredibly well at the box office. That really helps, and people really like when it's, you know, it's essentially the movie of the moment right now. It broke late, but it broke very hard and very big and very wide, won that Globe, so pushed that edge over to getting a huge box office that's been doing well internationally and domestically. In a lot of ways, Hollywood is still sort of old-fashioned, especially we want to see that, oh, there's an international branch which is, you know, starting to come into effect. It's still Hollywood. There's still sort of a little bit of a boys' club and sort of a traditional factor. We see this with movies like Green Book or even The Shape of Water, with very simplistic stories. I think 1917 sort of fits into that factor. It's a war movie which they love, and they've given the award to a lot of times, but haven't done it maybe that often. You know, the last war movie to win was The Hurt Locker in 2008. So this is a kind of movie that they love, the sort of war movie that, especially when you're talking about the Academy, which is mostly male. Even though the Academy is the largest branch, the acting is the largest branch. There's still a lot of tech people that will really love this movie, and the amount of craftsmanship that went into this movie. And you're looking at the path of what it can win. It could very easily win both sounds. It could very easily win score. It can win cinematography, and then Best Picture and Best Director. That's 6. That sort of makes sense to something like The Hurt Lock, for example. Now, it is notable that sort of the cons, I guess you'll say, of 1917 is the lack of acting support. Not only did it not get a SAG Ensemble nomination or any acting support at SAG, it didn't get any nominations anywhere, not even at BAFTA, not even here. And a movie that hasn't won a Best Picture without an acting nomination, you have to go back to Slumdog Millionaire in 2009, so almost 10 years ago now. So that's really hard to win still without any support from the acting branch. But really, in a lot of ways, we don't know how well the acting branch really likes this movie, because I think it was too early to qualify for SAG, so it didn't get any nominations there. I don't think enough people saw it to get it in there. But it also didn't get any nominations, acting nominations, at the Oscars. So it definitely has to overcome that hurdle. But everything aside from that, the box office, the fact that it's a war movie, the sort of simplistic kind of story, a man on a mission story, it still has good acting in it. I think the BAFTAs are really going to like it. And we may go into a situation where it has won PGA, it wins Sam Mendes for Best Director at DJ, and then I think it's fairly easily probably going to win BAFTA. Then that just sort of pushes it to be like, this is the front runner, this is the movie, and I don't think it's going to necessarily get taken down because it's such a shortened season that most likely 1917 is going to win. It has a lot going for it right now, but there's still some historical things, like missing that SAG Ensemble nomination. We don't know if it's going to win director yet at the DGAs. And then also it doesn't have any acting nominations, but I still think it's very easily can win 6 Oscars, and that seems like a great sort of big sweep war Best Picture movie that's kind of classical in a lot of ways, and I could easily see that happening. Then I guess the number 2 frontrunner would be Parasite, because of that SAG Ensemble win. It's also a movie that has a great path to it, because it can win a lot of times. The Best Picture winner often correlates to Best Screenplay. So that's why it was crucial to get 1917 for a Best Screenplay nomination. And also notable, 1917 didn't get an editing nomination, which is very crucial, which I'll explain right now. Essentially, I have had some comments about it where editing, why this is such a crucial nomination for it to win is because in the past 38 years, only one film has won Best Picture without a Best Editing nomination, and that was Birdman. And the assumption why it didn't get nominated for Best Editing is because it's seemingly done in one take, so there is no editing. The same reasoning could be applied to 1917. Looks like it's in one take, there's very little editing, therefore it wasn't nominated for editing. But oftentimes that editing nomination shows a lot of great support for it. So with a movie like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I think that's chances are decreasing because it didn't get SAG Ensemble, it didn't get PGA, it's probably not going to get director, it missed that editing nomination, so now it's really struggling. But going back to Parasite, it's still a movie that has a great path to Best Picture because it's correlated to screenplay. Parasite can win maybe Best Screenplay and then maybe win Best Picture. We often see that the sort of easy path to Best Picture, and the traditional path would be getting an acting win, getting a screenplay win, and then getting a picture win. Green Book last year got Mahershala Ali, got screenplay, and then of course got Best Picture. A couple years before that, Moonlight got Best Picture, got Best Adapted Screenplay, and got Best Supporting Actor for Mahershala Ali. And then even before that, the year before that, Spotlight got Best Screenplay and then gets in for Best Picture. So that's a really sort of a great correlation, where oftentimes the director's branch is often a split. Damien Chazelle wins for La La Land the same year Moonlight wins for Best Picture. Last year, Alfonso Cuarón wins for Roma, where Green Book wins for Picture. So there's more often a split between director and picture, and now there's more of a connection between picture and screenplay. So if Parasite wins screenplay, it has that acting support we know, so that's strong. Maybe it surprises with the Best Editing or something, and then wins Best Picture, or even wins Best Director for Bong Joon-ho and then wins Best Picture. That's a really easy path for it to win. So I think that's sort of the pros of it. The cons are the SAG Ensemble's not that well recognized. It also doesn't have any acting nominations, but clearly has acting support from the branch because that SAG Ensemble win has got some of the technical support with something like a production design. Now, we don't know how beloved it is, and ultimately the con is that it's a foreign film. If we think Hollywood's going to go traditionalist and go for this simple war movie, and simple story in a lot of ways, it's very technically complex. Or will they go for a movie that is a foreign film, which is still something that is going to be hard for them to do, I think, and still a barrier that it's still foreign. And even though it's a large international branch, I still think the large sort of Hollywood contingency will ultimately push over the edge and maybe won't love Parasite the way maybe everyone else loves Parasite. But it's done very well at the box office. It's had a historic run for a foreign film. And winning that SAG Ensemble is definitely a great achievement for it, and still has a good shot, I think, at getting in for Best Picture. Then in the third slot, I'd go Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Similar to Parasite, I think it maybe even has an easier path to Best Picture. Now, it didn't get at PGA, it didn't get at SAG Ensemble in terms of in winning, which is a crucial blow to that, because if it won PGA and even if it won SAG, it could have easily won Best Picture, because you see something like, oftentimes what I talked about with the Mahershala Ali with Green Book or Moonlight, the Best Picture winner is tied with screenplay and in acting. And what the assumption is, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is going to get in for Best Original Screenplay, then Brad Pitt's going to get nominated for Best Supporting Actor, or excuse me, win for Best Supporting Actor, and then wins Best Picture. That's sort of an easy path for something that is kind of, in a lot of ways, Brad Pitt is almost a guaranteed win. Screenplay, it has great chances to win. So that's sort of a really great path for them to reward a Tarantino movie and still reward the man himself without giving him director. Now, he could win something at DGA, and then maybe it still has a good chance at moving in, but missing PGA and SAG are real crucial blows to that kind of a film. But it is also the pros being that it's sort of a classic Hollywood film. It's about Hollywood. It's a movie about itself. It's a movie that sort of celebrates this long past. I think a large group of the Academy really likes, sort of old men reflecting back on the past, whether it be something like The Irishman or even Pain and Glory, or now Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But the cons being missing those two huge movies, that maybe just the momentum's not there, because it was released in July, didn't get PGA win, didn't get SAG win. It's probably just going to get Brad Pitt and screenplay. But if it does get picture, don't be surprised. This is why it's still a front runner, is because it has such an easy path, and we don't know how DGA is going to come out, and maybe Quentin Tarantino wins there, which would be a little bit wrench thrown into the race. But that's not necessarily a guarantee it's going to win if it wins DGA. That just sort of would make the race a little bit more confusing is all. But Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, you can still predict it, but missing those two, PGA and SAG, I think are real big blows to the film, unfortunately, because it was nominated in both. It didn't win either. And you know, something like PGA, which is so accurate, it really needed to win there, and it maybe just losing a little bit of momentum. That being said, it still can win, and that's why it's number 3 frontrunner. Then my fourth slot, I'm going to go with Joker. This is a film that, you know, did so well. It has the most amount of nominations, so it can still win, right? Yes, it still can win, but it has a lot of challenges to overcome. It's very easy to get a lot of nominations with being a movie that's very passionately loved, the same way Joker was, the same way something like The Favorite was last year, or movies that, or even something like Jojo Rabbit this year, getting in, because in order to get a Best Picture nomination, you really only need 5% of the support from the Academy to get in. So while Joker has more than 5% support, I think there was a strong fan base for that movie that really loved that movie, that pushed it in every category, that sort of spread out through the acting branches and the tech branches, which is always very crucial. But in order to win Best Picture, because of the preferential ballot explained earlier in the video, I think that it needs to be a little bit more generally appreciated, and I'm not sure if it's that it. You know, you could argue that it's a $1 billion movie, it's a huge success, it has a political aspect. Those are all things that are going for it. It's going to get an acting win most likely, it got nominated for screenplay. But it's going to be very rare for me to see something like Joker maybe win maybe a score, and then maybe an actor, and then a picture. That's an unusual sort of path. Todd Phillips is most likely not going to win for Best Director. He could, but probably not going to win for Best Adapted Screenplay, which hurts it. And to me, the ultimate question is this movie as divisive within the Academy as it was with critics? You know, within critics, it was about you either loved it or you hated it. It was a divisive movie. Now, it seems to be obviously less of a divisive movie within the Academy because it got 11 nominations. People like it. But is it enough of a consensus movie to win Best Picture? To me, after seeing the movie and knowing about movies, I understand why it's divisive. I understand why some people don't like it. Therefore, I'm not exactly super confident that it's going to win Best Picture. It's also a comic book movie. A movie that the first comic book movie that got nominated for Best Picture was last year for Black Panther. So it's only the second comic book movie to ever get nominated. It still has a lot of those stereotypical sort of challenges to overcome. It doesn't have an easy path. It didn't win. It didn't get nominated at SAG Ensemble. It didn't win PGA, which would be the best indicator if they really liked it in the preferential ballot. It got the most amount of nominations, but right now, I think it may struggle into getting that ultimate win. But maybe if it wins a BAFTA, maybe if Todd Phillips gets in for DGA, there's still these possibilities that it can still win and still sort of have this late surge. But my assumption is that it's a little bit more divisive, and maybe too divisive within the Academy for it to actually win Best Picture. Then that fifth slot, I'm actually going to go with Jojo Rabbit. And the assumption could be Martin Scorsese for The Irishman, but I think that movie is just sort of tanked in terms of momentum. It's a movie that's been falling. Didn't, of course, get SAG Ensemble, didn't get PGA, not getting any acting support. It may not even get Best Adapted Screenplay. It may go home empty-handed very easily. So now, so that's why I didn't really go with The Irishman. But Jojo Rabbit, I still think has a chance. It got that editing nomination, which was crucial. Didn't get in for director, but if it sort of follows the traditional path, which is screenplay, acting, and picture, it could happen. Now, Scarlett Johansson not getting anything for SAG Ensemble the way I predicted her really hurts her chances. You know, I talked about the SAG reactions previously in the video, how, you know, the acting is pretty much locked in, and Scarlett not winning there is crucial for her race, and sort of sucks, because if she got in for Jojo Rabbit, and then we think maybe Jojo Rabbit wins the Best Adapted Screenplay, then it could easily win Best Picture, and that's an easy path for it to win. However, Scarlett not getting in here, and its chances of Adapted Screenplay in such a competitive category, some people think it's going to go Greta Gerwig for Little Women, some people think maybe it's going to go Steve Zalian for The Irishman, and that's the reward for something like The Irishman. It's going to be very divisive to see, and I'm not exactly sure what the ultimate result is going to be, but Jojo Rabbit still has that path. But it would have helped if Scarlett Johansson got in for Best Actress. Really, my sort of top three that I think you should be seriously considering for winning Best Picture would be Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, 1917, and Parasite. But if you really want to narrow it down a little bit more, it's 1917 and Parasite. But of course, the DGA race is still happening. BAFTAs will tell us a lot. So stay tuned and subscribe to the channel so you never miss a video and you stay up to date on the most up-to-date latest reactions to the award shows, and then how that impacts all the other races. I'm also going to be talking about tech categories and acting races, and then doing one final long episode of the Oscar nominations. But also, I have an award show coming up, my own award show called it's going to be the 4th annual Connors, where I give my opinion on my favorite movies of the year and my favorite categories and who's my favorite actor of the year. Sometimes it's similar to the Oscars, sometimes it's not, but I do a lot of the similar categories, but my own categories as well, including Best Ensemble and Best Trailer. It's a great time. I've been having a blast every year. You guys seem to love it. So stay tuned for that. I'm going to be releasing that on the 27th. So you can have sort of the own Olds Oscar Countdown Awards community having my opinion on my award show, and that'll be a lot of fun too. That's about it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video, and until next time, stay tuned.